Support for higher education in focus comes from the Penn State Alumni Association, serving alumni and alma mater for 145 years. On the web at alumni.psu.edu. Penn State Bookstore, improving the student experience at Penn State with philanthropic support of student causes throughout the university. On the Hub Lawn or at psu.bncollege.com. The attorneys of McNeese, Wallace, and Nurek. Your mission, your goal, your lawyers. More at mwn.com. And from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Higher Education in Focus. I'm Patty Satalia with my co-host, Penn State President Dr. Eric Barron. In the early part of the 20th century, most Americans thought higher education was reserved for the wealthy elite. That all changed when the GI Bill of Rights was passed in 1944. The law created access for a whole group of people who never thought they could afford to attend college. But since 1980, tuition rates have steadily climbed while financial aid programs have not kept pace. Students are leaving school with more debt, taking longer to graduate, and some aren't graduating at all. These problems have become a priority for Penn State. Here to talk with us about how the university is tackling these issues is Renata Engel, Associate Vice Provost for Online Programs, and Dave Christiansen, Associate Vice President for Commonwealth Campuses and Senior Associate Dean for Academic Programs. They're part of the university's Strategic Planning Working Group on transforming education and access. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
I'll start with you, Dr. Barron, because you've directed so-called working groups to lead the thinking and development on 6 priorities for Penn State. One of them is access and affordability. And before we talk about some pilot programs that these two and others are working on, why is access and affordability such a critical issue at Penn State now and in the future?
Well, we have a mission. We're a great public, and so we don't want to be a public in name only. We want to make sure that we fulfill that mission of educating the population of the Commonwealth and increasingly the United States, and we have a global reach. So really what we want to be able to do is look at any student in the eye and say, come to Penn State if you're hardworking and smart, and you're going to put forth that effort. You come to Penn State. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your financial background is like. I don't care what your history is like. You will graduate at that very same high rate, and you will be successful out there in the world. And that, in my view, turns a great public into a truly great public.
Well, some people may say, well, how is access and affordability an issue at Penn State when in 2014, 127,000 people applied to Penn State? And enrollment rose by 3%.
It did, and we have a lot of good stories that tell us that our value proposition is very high. That students from across the spectrum say, look, I know if I go to Penn State, I'm going to a top-ranked university in the top 1% of the world. And not only that, every business magazine out there ranks us as the place to recruit, or the most prepared students for the business world. So our students tend to be very successful. That's worth something. That's really worth something. And so they come. But then, my feeling is you got to dig beneath those numbers. Are they hiding anything? Well, one thing they're hiding is that students are taking longer. And that means they're borrowing money. So if we take the class that came in 2007, going years 5 and 6, they borrowed $23 million. Okay, so I can drive down the debt of my students, the debt load that graduate, just by getting them to graduate on time. Well, and then I also see that if I'm need-based, I graduate at a much lower rate than if I'm not need-based. Okay, to me this
only
is just...
Only 8% of those in the low-income background graduate.
Right now, we do much better than the national average there, but our lowest income category graduates 22 percentage points below, say, a family income that's $180,000. Not only that, they're taking longer to graduate because they're working too many jobs, and they take smaller class load. which means that's already more time. Plus, if they're working, they don't do as well, and they may have to drop a class. And so you end up with the fact that the neediest student is actually paying more for their college education, and many of them—
And then are they straddled with more debt?
And they're straddled with more debt, or they look and say, at this rate, I'm not going to finish, and look how much money I'm going to owe, I'm going to drop out. So this is the real issue. People tend to focus on the tuition increase, $400. You can't keep doing this. Really, you know, the success of our students suggests that we have to maintain that quality. A bigger issue is the student that goes another year and pays $16,000. That's
for another year.
That's the biggest tuition increase than you can possibly imagine. They're not employed, so they're not making money. They're paying for housing, food, and their tuition. I can't think of a better tuition increase. So
I agree with you, but I don't think that argument about tuition increases is going to go away when we look at the fact that, right, it's increased 1,000% since 1970.
Let's beat the most pressing problem, making sure that that we drive down student debt and we drive down the total cost of a degree. That's the most pressing problem. And for publics, the other financial issue is a little bit tricky, because if we actually look at the percentage that a state provides to the university and a tuition dollar, they've just replaced each other. The state appropriation dollar has been replaced by a tuition dollar. And actually the state support has declined as a percentage of total budget more than the tuition has.
And of course, Penn State, among the Big Ten, has the lowest per student state funding of any school in the system.
But we're in the top end of the quality spectrum, which is a statement that we're actually efficient in delivering quality, but we lag behind our peers in what the state support is, so you make up for it by having high tuition. That's why I need these guys to come up with great solutions.
Well, one of the things you mentioned was getting students, making sure they're prepared so that they can get through in 4 years, and the calculus on that, as you said, is enormous. $400 versus $16,000 if you're paying for an extra year. You're working on a committee that's piloting something involved in preparing students. Tell us a bit about it.
Well, certainly, Patty. The committee is looking at a pilot program starting this summer at several campuses, in which we will be working with students, preparing them and developing their math skills so that when they start classes in the fall semester, they're going to be at a level that they need to be in order to graduate in 4 years. So very often, let's say students want to come in and they want to major in engineering, but they haven't been able to take calculus in high school. And in the past, they would find themselves having to start at algebra or some lower level of mathematics when they came to Penn State, and they would already be behind once they enrolled in the university. So what we're trying to do over the summer is work with these students and get them up to the level that they need to be so they can get off to a quick start once they start classes this fall.
And if you think about this, the opposite can also occur, that a student might come in and misjudge where their math placement should be. And if they're tested and done appropriately, you can actually save them credit hours by saying, no, you can fit in here for your major. Absolutely.
And actually, we're hoping to, once we get this program running, we're hoping that we will be able to work with students while they're still in high school. These are seniors who have accepted their offer to Penn State, and we want to be working with them already so that they're going to have a successful first semester at the university.
So this is called efficiency, really.
Yes, it is.
It's student efficiency in getting a degree.
Yes.
Yeah. And some of this, Renata, can happen online. And before I ask you to comment on that, I'd like to just say that U.S. News & World Report ranked Penn State's World Campus #1 in terms of delivering bachelor degrees.
That's correct.
Online.
Yes, it's something we're really quite very proud of.
How can we not be proud of that?
That's right.
So how would online help a student who's not quite prepared?
Right. So, and we're doing some of this now. In fact, some of the preparation, because students will be at a high school, and Penn State attracts students from all over the world, certainly across Pennsylvania, but around the nation and around the world. And their ability to come to Penn State to get those preparatory courses while they're still in high school is not feasible. But this is where online can play a significant role. And we can do some of this already with some of the tools that we have. Some of the companies we're working with that provide some assessment tools, and then the curriculum that we're able to put behind that to help them better prepare and to be able to step into that. So the online delivery there is a really important element.
So this is online and Head Start.
Correct.
Were you also debating options about how you could almost have an online scholarship so that in the summer you're taking a class online, but you're at home and you're working and you're saving costs?
We're looking at that for one of our transition programs, which is another program that we have that we're, I would say, beefing up this year through this particular task force that we're working on. But it really focuses there primarily on the, we're targeting between the sophomore and the junior year. That is when students are entering their major. But obviously, no matter what we do now with any of these pilot projects, can very easily be extended across other semesters, other transition points for the students.
So just to make sure we've got this, why pilot?
So our pilots are...
Instead of just jump in and do it.
Sure. Yeah, you see them, they're good ideas, we could jump in and do it, but you know, the language, we're already on 2 examples and both are pilots. So
well, yeah,
describe the thinking there.
Okay, so the pilot thinking is that to expand some of these programs or to move in this direction, you want to be able to do them extraordinarily well. Our numbers by saying pilot doesn't necessarily mean they will be small, because we're thinking that they will serve a large number of students. One of the things that the pilots will help us do is to look at some of the metrics as well, is to make sure that we're achieving what we intend to achieve. So if we intend to, in a transition program, a student going from the sophomore to the junior year, and we want to make sure that they're transitioning from a campus to University Park and hit the ground running and have a very successful junior year at University Park, we're going to be looking at those metrics, the GPAs. Do they drop courses? What is their perception of their experience? Were they able to comfortably attend that career fair in September, just weeks after they've joined campus? And those sorts of things. We want to get the student perspective as well. So I think one of the elements of a pilot, even when they're large pilots, will be for us to do some of that data collection and to make sure that we can tweak things a bit, or we can accelerate what we're doing.
And the interesting thing is that you are a product of this 2+2 option.
Absolutely.
You spent 2 years at a branch campus and then 2 years at University Park, so you know what you know what that's like, making that transition from usually a smaller campus where you know everyone to this enormous campus that is University Park.
Right. So I think one of the best features of Penn State is really the breadth of opportunities they provide through their campuses. And when I say campuses, I mean the physical locations as well as World Campus. My experience at Penn State Fayette campus, which is now the Eberly campus, was I was there 2 years. I transitioned to University Park, completed my engineering degree in 4 years. I remember what that felt like, that transition. It is a challenge. You're at a much larger university. There are many more distractions. There are many more opportunities. And trying to make those decisions at the point when you're also entering your major is a challenge for students, because you're hitting a curriculum right then, which is in some cases, really tasking you in ways to apply the knowledge you've gained in the first 2 years. And so I think this transition program we're looking at, which we're calling STEP, Students in Transition, we think it's going to help alleviate that, mitigate some of those challenges, allow students to have a more successful transition, and then be successful graduates in 4 years and have that kind of experience.
What type of pilots are you thinking about for those students that are in particular need-based, and we know that our retention rate is lower?
Right.
Yes. Well, what we are doing is we are looking at providing summer opportunities for those students. Starting this summer at several campuses, we would like to offer for students who are low income or provisional or first generation, those sorts of students, the opportunity to take classes at a Penn State campus and work on campus 10 to 20 hours at that time. So we would like to provide some employment for them, or perhaps in the community as well. And these students, we're hoping to provide them with some scholarship dollars to support their classwork. So that would be in the first year. They would again be off to a quick start, and they would then, of course, enter classes as other groups with all the other students in the fall. We would like also to have a second year for these students as well, where they could take up to 12 credits in the summer, catch up on any work that they fell behind on, but even better, get ahead and be prepared to enter their junior year, or excuse me, their sophomore year on track.
So they're working and being paid.
Yes.
And they're taking credits, so they don't have the financial disadvantage, and they have scholarship funds, and now they're no longer looking far down the road that it's going to take a long time to graduate.
Absolutely.
They see the end in sight and financially in a way that'll work.
We want to map it out for them as much as possible. These students oftentimes do not have the luxury that a lot of us had, in that we are second or third generation academic students, where we had parents who had been through the process. There are so many unknowns for a great group of students out there. We want to provide a roadmap for them, keep them on track.
Academic advising in the environment that you're talking about here is going to be critical. And I know when I went to school, it was practically non-existent. But for the pilots that you're talking about to work, you really need to know your students and to work with them. Tell me a little bit about how you'll do that.
Well, we certainly want faculty members and staff members to be involved with them. It's very important for the students to have the interactions with the faculty, who are the role models in the classroom. But it is important for the staff there to be available for the academic advising and help them in the acculturation of working on a campus at a campus location.
What about technology and the same type of thing? Not exactly advising, but can we catch students that may fall off their degree map and save them time?
Certainly, and let me speak a little bit on this, but I think this is where World Campus can be very helpful. All of the Penn State campuses, all 20 campuses that offer undergraduate degrees, offer a pretty broad portfolio of courses over the summer. But there are always going to be some courses that are not available for students to take in a residential setting. However, I think we have such wonderful resources here at Penn State in which we can share these courses at a distance that we should be taking better advantage of these online opportunities. Our students certainly could benefit from them, and this will, again, keep our costs down a little bit, and it will make sure that students stay on track.
You know, this is big thinking, and I'm wondering, what the impact might be, not just for Penn State, but beyond some of these pilot projects that you're talking about here.
Well, certainly this is an institution that is very capable of taking on leadership at a national scale and a global scale. When we do something right, a lot of people look and see how we're doing it. I think that the opportunity to look at this in a comprehensive way with multiple pilots, having the funding for those pilots, because we have set aside the money to make sure that this isn't a task force that's sitting there thinking of ideas. This group is going to get to see the ideas that they propose go into action, because we're committed to doing this and being successful. So if a place like Penn State, with really incredibly modest state support, actually begins to drive down student debt and increase four-year graduation rates, and watch the first in family to go to college, highly correlated with lower income status, and we watch those students have retention rates and graduation rates that approach a population that has 3 generations of college and a stronger income because of that college background. If we really start to see those numbers change, and we will, we absolutely will, then this is going to be a great success story. It really is going to be a great. And my sort of feeling about Penn State is we've got a lot of bright people that work here. And if they're given a problem and asked to solve it, and you make sure there's the resources to do it, we can do it. We can do it. So it's very exciting for me.
Yeah. I have to say that about our committee. It's actually, our committee comes from a wide variety of elements of the university, but the success of these projects is because of the integration across the whole university.
Yes.
It's not David and I working on these projects. It's really a very broad group of individuals that are committed to having this kind of success.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you to Renata Engel, Associate Vice Provost for Online Programs, and Dave Christiansen, Associate Vice President for Commonwealth Campuses and Senior Associate Dean for Academic Programs. In just a moment, I'll talk one-on-one with President Barron about other important initiatives, including making Penn State a more diverse university. We'll be right back. And we're back with Penn State President Eric Barron. We were talking about these working groups that you've assembled, one that's working on access and affordability issues, and one of the pilot projects we didn't get a chance to talk about was this financial wellness. Tell us something about that.
Well, so there's data out there now which suggests that if you understand more about your financial well-being, if you understand more of the impact of borrowing, and you understand more about how it is that you expend funds, you borrow less. So one project at another Big Ten university looked like it saved $20 million in debt in a single year by just talking about things like, well, this will be your payment when you graduate for the loans that you're taking out. And the payment causes the student to say, well, you know, maybe I really would rather have a roommate than have that as being the payment that I have.
Or I'm not going to drop this class.
Or I'm not going to drop this class
through.
because that's going to cost me another semester. And so this whole notion of financial literacy and financial wellness, parent and student, can help our students, it can help drive down the cost of a college education, and what's more is make the student financially more successful when they graduate because they have less debt.
Now, one thing we also didn't talk about is the future campaign, For the Future, the campaign for students. You raised over $2 billion. What portion of that will be used to help students with access and affordability to Penn State?
So our alumni, and you just have to be so incredibly proud of the culture of philanthropy and the attitude that our alumni have about access and affordability, because $510 million is designated to student scholarships, and much of that for students that are need-based. This is a phenomenal accomplishment for a campaign.
You know, 80% of students who come from a family with a high income or with a parent who went to college, their chances of graduating from college are 80% will graduate. But if you're talking about a low-income family, only 8% graduate.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this is money that's really needed to help that population.
It really is. And of course, that looks at the population as a whole, but we still see it. Despite our programs, despite our effort, we still see that graduation gap based on income. And so we know we can beat it. We know the good ideas. We can beat that. The financial literacy, doing things as our guests were talking about, to help people have a good head start, to be very efficient in choosing their courses and prerequisites, to having summer opportunities so they don't get behind. They actually might be ahead by the time they choose a major. All these things are targeted to solve what I think are the biggest problems in holding back the success of students that are financially challenged.
And you know, this is a concern to the nation as a whole.
It is.
If we're graduating, if our college graduates are leaving school with $32,000 or more in debt, and some of them are defaulting, this is something that impacts all of us.
Yes, it does.
And so it's important, I think, to, you know, a lot of students come to school and they don't know what they want to do. They don't know what they want to be. And so they flounder trying to figure that out, and they may drop out. So now they have no degree and they have debt.
That's even the worst story. So I look at it as you know, there's a tuition increase. Okay, that makes us all uncomfortable. High cost, because of low state support. Okay, that makes me uncomfortable. Going an extra year and paying $16,000, awful. Not getting a degree and having debt, I can't think of anything worse.
And yet Penn State, one of your 6 priorities, in addition to access and affordability, is diversity and demographics. And Penn State has greater diversity in the last couple of years, geographically and in terms of ethnic representation. Tell me how you're doing that and why it's an important goal for Penn State.
Okay, so I have lots of thoughts here. One is, you know, you look farther down the road, it's easier to get to where you want to go. So if we look at diversity, what do you see? Well, first of all, it's a moral imperative. This is our mission. We're a public. We educate the population of Pennsylvania. Do we look like Pennsylvania? So part of being a public and educating that student population is paying attention to this issue. Second thing is, if we talk to our students, they tell us that if they're meeting and interacting with people very different than they are, from different countries, from different economic backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, their experience is richer. They will tell you that over and over and over again. So there's an environmental richness imperative here. And the third part that a lot of people don't think about is the demographics in this nation are changing. If you don't keep up, if you're not welcoming, you're not inclusive, your business model will fail. I'm willing to bet we'll see some universities go under because essentially they've captured one portion of the demographic and it's not sustainable. And so this is why thinking down the road about being welcoming and inclusive is so important. It's also a reason to actually project the population in the state of Pennsylvania. By campus, looking around us, how's it changing? Will our business model still work? And I think it's interesting because people tend to look at it from one piece. You've got to look at all three pieces.
All right. On that note, we are out of time. We'd like to thank our guest today, Renata Engel. She's Associate Vice Provost for Online Programs, and Dave Christiansen, Associate Vice President for Commonwealth Campuses and Senior Associate Dean for Academic Programs. With Penn State President Dr. Eric Barron, I'm Patty Satalia. For all of us here at WPSU, thanks for joining us.
Support for Higher Education in Focus comes from the Penn State Alumni Association, serving alumni and alma mater for 145 years. On the web at alumni.psu.edu. Penn State Bookstore, improving the student experience at Penn State with philanthropic support of student causes throughout the university. On the Hub Lawn or at psu.bncollege.com. The attorneys of McNeese, Wallace, and Nurek. Your mission, your goal, your lawyers. More at mwn.com. And from viewers like you. Thank you.